Morning everyone, thanks for joining us this morning. I'm Tim Richards, Scout Services Manager of Managing General Agents Association, and on behalf of the MGAA, I'd like to welcome you to our community Lloyd session this morning. For those joining remotely, please ensure the microphone and camera are turned off unless asking a question or contributing. Also, feel free to use the chat button at the bottom of your screen. The presentation is accredited for CPD hours if relevant to your ongoing leadership development program. This session is being recorded and a link to the recording will be issued post-event together with our feedback survey. Please take the time to complete the survey, which will give us valuable feedback for future sessions. And just personal note, insights will relaunch this calendar year. Topics are driven by you through focus groups, so the subjects that you want to hear about. Please do contact me if you're interested in joining the focus group. Insights are also on a hybrid basis, and those joining in person, like a number of people here this morning. There was a half-hour session. So without further ado, let me pass on to Marco, our chair.
Thanks, Tim. Just for those that don't know me, I'm Marco, probably one of the directors of the MGA. Also run MGA, all the access assured, involvement in insurance. First thing I'm going to do is massively apologize for the drilling. We have building works right beside us, so we are going to mute when we're not on. In a bit. This forum is called the Connect with Lloyds. It was originally called the Lloyds Market Forum. We called it the Connect with Lloyds and rebranded it largely because we wanted it to be a more engagement-driven approach and have it, people being able to ask questions, get answers, discuss topics and the like. So I strongly encourage everyone. As we're going through this, if you have questions, other than the drilling, we can stop it. If you have questions, if there's comments that you want to make, contributions you want to make, or otherwise, by all means, just stick your hand up in the chat facility, or if you're here in person or want to just chime in, by all means, just speak. It is intended to be Tim had already mentioned our 30-minute CPD. Strongly recommend everyone can qualify for that. So if they want to use it for that purpose, that's great. Accordingly, just to recap, last Connect with Lloyds forum that we had was on the 30th of November, where again we covered off on a number of topics. We had Bruce Carmen come in and discuss sort of an intro on Hive. We talked a little about consumer duty that we're going to be talking about a little bit further today. Stuart Spink also gave us an update who's going to be speaking today on a topic close to my heart around underwriting performance. And then we just had an general update. Yeah. So just briefly today's agenda, we had a substitution at the last minute. Jane Harley unfortunately couldn't be here. Stuart Spink has kindly stepped in for her to discuss Lloyd's corporate strategic priorities. And then we've got Alice Benbow and Katie Day, who are going to talk about consumer health companies and best practice, fair value conduct risk, Gabriella Barker, and then Q&A, where we've got some questions from the past. So why don't we just turn over the mic to Stuart to give us an overview on Lloyd's corporate strategic priorities with regards to delegated authority. Stuart.
So morning everyone, thanks for your time. I know I attended the MGAA Connect session, I think it was November time. So for those who don't know who I am, I'm Stuart Spink, head of Delegated Underwriting Performance at Lloyd's, and I've got a few of my other colleagues on the call, Alice and Ella. So we're going to go through a few things regarding Lloyd's and updates. But one of the things we wanted to start off with was to give you all an update on the Lloyd's DA strategy, which I think we made reference to the piece of work that we were completing back end of last year, which went to Exco, etc., internally to get signed off. And what we've very much been doing in the first quarter is pulling together a sort of full project plan and talking to a number of people out in the market around what the strategy looks. So good opportunity to talk through this today. And if you've got questions as we go along, feel free to shout out. So if you want to move to the next slide. So Lloyd's, as you all know, Lloyd's have been writing business for about 121 years in the DA space, and over that time, the whole market's changed considerably. And I think even in the last 5 years, the world of DA is rapidly changing. And what we wanted to do was just take a step back and go, what is the role of the corporation when it comes to DA, and align to some of the other areas that we've been working on within the corporation with regards to our commercial strategy and increasing our relevance in the global marketplace. We really wanted to make sure that the DA portfolio, which makes up 40% of the overall Lloyd's book, was fully aligned to that. So as you can see on the slide we've got in front of us, the kind of 4 areas of what we're wanting to really home in on is obviously trying to attract the high quality DA business and reward those that have got capabilities and can demonstrate a sustainable performance. We do recognize that we compete in a global marketplace. So, Lloyd's is one platform of many, whether it's Bermuda, company market, etc. So recognizing competing with a DA competition and leveraging our brand and unique advantages is something I don't think we've probably done as well as we should have done historically. So really homing in on what Lloyd's can offer, particularly in the DA space, is something that we were keen to bring out. Again, the customer service piece was really key, and the word sort of solution and collaborative style. This is something. So I sit in the underwriting function, reporting into Rachel Turk as the CEO. It's something, there's been various stages where Lloyd's have been over the last few years, given where we are in the market and what we think as the corporation we should be doing. We very much want to be solution orientated. So how can we help yourselves, the syndicates, brokers in the market, come up with solutions that make Lloyd's, the attractive platform that it's known for. And then finally, the last bit we mentioned on here is around adapting processes, systems and oversight to reflect the changing DA landscape. The world of DA and the number of different structures that are out in the market, are changing by the week at the moment, it feels like. And what we're not wanting to do is try and shove new world into old world processes and systems. So we're taking a step back to really assess that and try and make us as flexible and easy to do business as possible on the platform. So they are the kind of 4 areas. If we then look at the bottom 6, which are essentially, as we were coming up with some of the deliverables, these are the 6 buckets that if they don't align to these, we feel that there may be it's something that we're kind of holding all of our deliverables against. So first and foremost, we need to ensure that we meet our regulatory obligations and licensing. That's whether for DA or open market business, it's kind of one of the number one things that we need to make sure we're meeting. And we do a number of reporting for the market, and what we aren't trying to do is gold plate that. And I know sometimes it feels that there's quite a lot of work in that space. So what we're trying to do is take a real look at that and go, how can we simplify and really challenge ourselves and some of the regulators from some of the reporting aspects in that space. I mentioned allowing us to compete with the company market. I've been at Lloyd's for 2 years now, and I think we've a lot of the sort of senior management that are in place at the moment can't really recognise that actually it is a global marketplace. Lloyd's does have a huge attraction, but we can't just stand still. We need to be continuously evolving to ensure that we're attracting the right business onto the Lloyd's platform. The third one is enabling management of DA underwriting. So that does sit firmly kind of within my responsibilities. The way that we're structured within the underwriting team is we've got head of syndicate performance who looks at the kind of verticals within the market of the syndicates. We've got a class of underwriting performance which looks at the horizontals, and then myself who looks after all binders, consortia, broker facilities, and the lead follow or AI, algorithmic, whatever buzzword you want to use at that time. So again, this isn't us telling people how to underwrite. It's trying to bring best practice, ensure that we've got the right the market have got the right controls and structures in place to ensure it's sustainable across the cycle. Removing non-value add processes. This is a key one, and I know from speaking to a number of cover holders and syndicates that I think over time there's certainly still a lot of duplication in the market, and for various reasons we've got ourselves into certain positions. We're really keen to really home in, and when we get into a few of the later slides, actually show how we're going to simplify and just try bring a bit more transparency to some of this space. And again, this is Lloyd's not getting involved in stuff that we shouldn't be doing. We shouldn't be checking people's homework. We should be actually adding some value across the chain within the DA space. Brand is obviously key. And then finally, optimizing solutions for dual platform players. A lot of this, again, is what I call like Lloydisms, trying to remove some of the specific kind of reporting and requirements that Lloyd's have put in over time. And we're really sort of challenging ourselves. That's not just within DA, but wider within the corporation as to how can we be just simpler to deal with so that we're a bit more of an attractive platform. If there's no questions on that, we'll move to the next slide. This is just a slide just to show that, as we all know, in the wonderful world of DA, there's always a lot going on, and we are one part of a sort of wider cog that sits within the market. So you can see in the top left, we've got the corporation's activities and the areas that we're going to be focusing on. What we just wanted to show is that actually we're trying to be really joined up with the likes of the LMA and Future at Lloyd's and Velenetic around some of the other initiatives that are going on. So again, a number of you will probably know the DARE initiative that the LMA are leading on with regards to computable contracts. That's something we absolutely support, and when we get onto some of the data points, actually can see a huge benefit to the market, and again, removing duplication from some of the processes that sit alongside that. And then to the right, we've got the Data Council and Velenetic, where again, there's a huge amount going into Blueprint 2 and some of the core data standards that sit within there. Everything that we're doing from a strategy perspective, we're engaging with them to ensure that we're not going off down a rabbit hole. We're trying to align, and again, the whole sort of efficiency and data flow is something that we know in the DA world is key. And as they get to that phase further down the line, we're sort of designing the strategy to align to that as well. If you want to go to the next slide. Sometimes it's always quite useful just to say what we're not going to be doing within the strategy, and you'd be probably glad to hear the corporation. We are not going to be setting growth targets, or I mentioned that the overall Lloyd's portfolio is within DA is 40%. We are completely agnostic to the distribution source, so we aren't trying to reduce that to 20. At the same time, we don't have a target of growing it to 60%. What we are trying to do is ensure that the best, most sustainable, profitable business that sits on our platform is on the Lloyd's platform, and a lot of that is down to the managing agents and syndicates' choice of distribution. So we are not going to be putting set targets in that space, and similar around acquisition costs. We do have referrals and sort of commission, total commission amounts from a conduct perspective when it gets to a certain amount where we have to make sure that we're treating the customers fairly. Again, what we aren't trying to do is set acquisition costs or fees within the various structures within the market. What we are trying to do is ensure that there's transparency and ensure that there's alignment of interest for all parties who are involved in the writing of DA. Again, I think I've already mentioned this. It isn't my role to go around telling people how to write DA. We should be providing solutions and ensuring we've got the right frameworks and infrastructure for people to to write DA on the most efficient and profitable way. And again, replicating due diligence. The team have already moved quite significantly in this way in terms of the attestation approach. You know, between myself and Jane and Alice and Ella on the call, we aren't here to check other people's homework. What we should be doing is helping to facilitate due diligence in the most efficient way. And then lastly, an area which is I would say we're still working through is around some of the systems and technology that sit within the DA space. What we're trying to do is look at the processes and data first, and then look at the tech solution. The utopia that we've got within the strategy is that the corporation should be system agnostic for how we receive that information. So you will have heard, last year, the removing of the mandating of DDM. That was kind of the first phase of that. We're looking at our whole DO ecosystem and going, how can we face off to the market in a better, more efficient way that allows, the choices of technological solutions that yourselves in the market are already adopting. How can we plug in, but be really, really clear around what those data points are? That's kind of the sixth point that we're focusing on. If you want to move to the next slide. So with all that in mind, I should have added that this sort of strategy and those areas that we're focusing on, I appreciate are going to take a little bit of time to work through, and there's a number of deliverables that sit underneath each of those pillars. But what I just wanted to do is kind of just give you a bit of a flavour for some of the stuff that we're focusing on in 2024. Some of the stuff you'll already heard of, but so hopefully that reinforces some of the messaging. But there might be a few new areas of focus that between myself, Jane, and others in the corporation are working on. So mandating of lead security, should I add. So this is something that came to light probably sort of 12 months ago. And again, we've been speaking to a number of people in the market already on this, whereby at the moment in the policy documentation, and again, this isn't for the case for everything, the end customer will often receive the sentences as certain underwriters of Lloyd's. What we're trying to do is be more transparent to the end customer, and for 1/1/2025, we would like the lead syndicate to be noted on the end policy documentation that goes to the end customer. So we're going to be issuing some sort of full guidance on this sort of May, June time, which will allow the market to, one, kind of really see exactly what it is we're going to be saying with the words that we expect in the documentation, but also then allows the market time to make the adjustments within the systems. But we believe we already do it in the open market. It's something that we feel quite strongly around delivering in the DA space. So that's something that's going to be coming down the line. Another area, I'm sure many of you will know, Paul Brady, a piece of work that he's just about to kick off is around creating a piece of, and he's already done this on the claim side, is around the whole lead follow operational contract. What we're really trying to do here is be really crystal clear around what we believe the role and responsibilities of the lead insurer is, and therefore what's the role and responsibilities of the follow market. If we can be really clear within a framework, what we're hoping to do is remove probably some of the pain in duplication that we already see in the market across the chain, whether it's reporting, whether it's due diligence, whether it's particularly in the audit space, around actually, if the leader performs this and provides this information to the follow line market, this will mean that the follow line market won't have to keep on asking the same sorts of questions. So just really trying to simplify and remove some of the duplication that I think is in that space, particularly on the due diligence side. Third one, this is something, again, I'm sure Jane, Alice, and some of the others have already kind of communicated to this cohort around Lloyd's, who historically have always had sort of the 12-month or defined contract periods. Our view on this is that we're very much wanting to be agnostic for as whether it's a continuous evergreen contract or a defined period contract. We've done it for singletons, and we're doing a pilot to make sure that the kind of operational and processes for broadening that out for non-singleton contracts, for continuous contracts, is something we're working through. But we're really keen to push that, and certainly in 2024, by the end of the year, our view is that whether it's a continuous contract with the right exit period times or a defined contract, that's a commercial decision between yourselves and the capacity bearing. That's not for Lloyd's to dictate. So that's definitely something we're moving towards. I mentioned delegated underwriting performance. So this is, again, I'm hoping a number of you will have heard Lloyd's moving to a principle-based oversight. What we're doing is looking at all of the different principles that sit across the corporation and enhancing them, and actually just trying to be a bit more transparent around what good looks like in the DA space, and particularly from an underwriting point of view, and how all of those different functions talk to each other. Because as we all know, you need to have strong underwriting, operational, actuarial, conduct, pricing in order to run a good DA book. And what we're trying to do is just show what good looks like in that space. I mentioned some of the buzzwords that you often see kind of weekly in the Insurance Insider. So what we're tasked with doing at the moment is creating a Lloyd's AI underwriting strategy. What we're looking to do here is looking right across the value chain, whether it's looking at processes or actual line deployment through to claims or risk management, tech, the whole AI space is, as everyone knows, is dramatically changing. What we're keen to do is start to put some common language out in the market, because I think often I've found when talking to whether it's new entrants, cover holders, syndicates, tech firms, they often use different terms, which depending on the context can mean different things, and actually just bringing some common language in that space. So when someone says this, we really know this is what it actually means. Again, this is something that's definitely going to be evolving. And as a result, we massively see some of the opportunities in this space. At the same time, there's increased risks, and what we're doing as a kind of corporation from this work will then go, what's the oversight that we believe we need to be putting on this area of the market over the next 3 to 5 years. Similar to kind of like, when cyber first came about, AI is very immature in terms of, whether it's even like a product of ensuring the AI tool going wrong, or some of the processes that are helping underwriters to make a more informed decision far quicker. We're just having a quick look from end to end as well what that looks like. I won't steal Alice's thunder. I think you're going to be talking a little bit more around some of the guidance shortly. I mentioned the data piece already around us being system agnostic, and actually really challenging ourselves around, why do we ask for this information from the market? If we don't do anything with it, we shouldn't be asking the market to report on it. Likewise, if we go through this process and it hits one of those buckets that I mentioned at the start, particularly around regulatory reporting and licensing that isn't gold standard, how can we face off to the market and be more system agnostic, so we're easier to do with, and we're not, mandating systems is something that we're not looking to do in the DA space going forward. And then finally, obviously sort of claims sit outside of my remit, but one of the things we're keen to do is move to the attestation approach that we've already done in the cover holder space. So this is kind of aligning what we've got in the cover holder space into claims. So I think claims is probably something we could come back and talk to this cohort at another time, because there's quite a lot happening in that space, where we've strategically at a corporation level recognize that we probably need to do more in the claim space. So there's a wider strategy taking place, but certainly within the DCA community, what we're trying to do is, for approvals, move to that kind of attestation approach, which obviously makes it a bit more simpler and controlled. Conscious I've just rattled through a load of information and tried to cover that fairly quickly, but they're the main areas of focus for DA in 2024. Hopefully there's not any too big surprises in there, and it aligns to some of the stuff that we've been talking about, but happy to take any questions or elaborate on any areas if that's helpful. I don't know whether I've gone into silence again with my lack of IT skills, or
We're on mute here. Thanks for that. That was good, actually. It's when going through everything that you've gone through there's a few sort of things that certainly resonated with me. Certainly things like focus on acquisition costs and staying out of that, just recognizing that DA costs, because it's doing volume business, does tend to operate at higher acquisition costs accordingly, and therefore that to open market, just for me, has just stood out for a long time. It's just comparing apples to oranges. It never made a whole lot of sense. So with that, music to my ears and probably some other people. It's good that I can see that there's also just straight intent on being able to compete with company market, and putting that out as a principle, I think, is great. And recognizing the company markets often have, they're often in situations where they're at a competitive advantage in terms of being able to have greater flexibility, longer time frames in terms of binder periods, and the like. So those are things that I think, for me, sort of, absolutely stood out. I didn't hear any mention of a couple things. One was around sort of area that you were in, around sharing of underwriting performance. That whole bit of raising the bar in terms of sharing of information, so that those that are in delegated authority situations are more on an equal footing relative to managing agents and syndicates. I also didn't hear anything around cover holder approvals. That whole bit around looking at trying to bring in new business into the market and what can be done around strengthening that and improving that. Maybe you can just touch on those.
Yes. So I think on the data piece, in terms of the performance data and playing that back to the market. So what we are doing is across all reporting, whether it's underwriting, capital reserving, kind of DA oversight, Lloyd's already asked for a huge amount of information from the market. So as we're trying to enhance our oversight from a performance perspective, what we're, the second phase of that is, once we've got a better understanding on those data points, is looking, and I know this was something that came up in the last session when I was here around the sort of the LMA triangles, is going, at the moment, there's certain, as a corporation, we're only allowed to use data for certain purposes, and we're only allowed to share that with certain stakeholders. So the second phase of that data piece will be absolutely looking at that and going, as being part of the Lloyd's DA community, if you want to call it that, what's the incentive to place your business onto the Lloyd's platform? Actually, some of that will be, you get access to this, and this. That this, and this still needs to be worked through, and what we need to do is kind of go right back to the start around permissions, why we collect this information, and therefore the permissions that we're then able to use that with the market. Because at the moment, I know the big one that I get asked pretty much every single day is around the triangles. Strictly speaking, from a corporation perspective, we are only allowed that for data reasons to play that to managing agent syndicates. So it's something that's definitely on our list to do. And this comes back to, you know, why would you want to place your business on Lloyd's? Well, actually maybe get additional insight that you wouldn't do if you weren't on the Lloyd's platform. And then just going to your point around onboarding cover holders. I know, Alice, you'll probably be able to talk this far better. It's your world, but I know we've already done a huge amount in this space around reducing the time, actually pushing this down to the managing agents to do their work and attesting that they've gone through the process, as opposed to, you know, you go through the process, I now need to go talk to Lloyd's to make sure that they're comfortable. That's already in situ and has been rolled out. So I'm hoping, if there's any new cover holders on as part of the network here, they've maybe felt the more streamlined process versus some of the more heartache that others that have gone through maybe already got their cover holder status, unfortunately. But it's something we've already instructed. And again, if there's certain areas, I think for me, the lead follow piece, particularly around the due diligence, I still, you know, from when I talk to people in the market, I still feel that there's still a lot of duplication in that space. So if we can help provide some clarity, we're hoping that you don't have to feel like you're answering the same questions 2 or 3 times, which I think is often still the case.
Okay, thanks. While I'm here, I want to ask a few more questions, if that's all right. Through your an endless pit of knowledge, which is great. One of the things I think I always look at open market different than delegated authority, in the sense that when you write open market business, you're often writing bigger ticket risks, which tend to be larger, therefore have higher volatility. When writing portfolios, you get the portfolio effect of it's much lower volatility business. Has there been any consideration from the perspective of the internal management of that, as well as the capital side of it, as to whether that should be treated any differently? I.e., if you're writing portfolios of risks, whether that actually engenders a lower capital charge within Lloyd's and therefore can encourage that type of business, versus it just shares all the same regardless of limit that's deployed.
Good question. It's not something that we've sort of been looking at, but it's a good provocation. As you all know, the way in which we set capital obviously there's a variety of different ways, variables that go into ultimately setting that, but the line of business will tend to be, in terms of the capital intensity needed to hold for that particular business, is usually the major driving factor. One of the things that we are looking to do, and it's something that Patrick Tin and others have mentioned in the past, is around, we're calling it the market's willingness to lose. So, you know, telling someone that, particularly if you're a big, say, cat writer, that you lost money in 2017, I mean, that's not really providing some real sort of performance management insight to the market. And what we're starting to do, and this is our portfolio risk management team, is starting to have conversations with the market around, so what is your willingness to lose? So when we say willingness to lose, for a certain event, depending on your own appetite that the board and your executive management will set, are you wanting to, you know, for a typical loss of X, would that be in your 1 in 10 period, or is that 1 in your 5-year period, or 1 in 15-year period? So that when there is a market event, and, you know, we are here to, you know, underwrite and insure risk, as a corporation, we're not going to be coming out and, you know, necessarily kicking the hell out of some of the syndicates because they've had a loss in a major hurricane season. The question that would be going to them would be going, actually, that loss of that size, is that in line with what you set from your own appetite, and looking at it that way? But I can certainly speak to our capital team to see whether they've explored that from a distribution perspective, but I'm certainly not aware that that's the case at the moment.
It's just recognizing the underlying nature of portfolios and how portfolios are written versus single risk. And in single risk, it certainly makes sense to have more RDS-based modeling. When looking at portfolios, clearly it's different, but then that plays back into the capital side as well.
The thing is, Yeah, and the thing is as well, there are still some cover holders who will be writing bigger lines and in more volatile classes. So it's something that how we go about assessing the sort of capital volatility that sits within that, and therefore the distribution chain is something, I can certainly speak to our capital team to see if they've explored it.
Excellent, thanks. The other thing that you mentioned on one of your slides is dual platform players. Does that
Yeah.
mean composite? So if you've got a binder that crosses over composite versus Lloyd's, how's that being handled? Or does that mean something else, which is more aligned syndicates where you've got those? What do you, I didn't quite understand that.
Yeah, it's the reason on that, this is probably forms wider within the kind of some of the stuff that we're working on within the corporation. Is if you look at the 100-odd syndicates-ish that are on our platform now, a number of them are obviously got dual platforms, whether it's, company market, Bermuda-centric, and have a Lloyd's platform as well. What we're trying to do is, and this, like I said, it's not just in DAs, why do we have certain Lloydisms in terms of reporting or asking the market to do one thing when they already do it within their own group company? So whether some of the stuff that we're looking at as part of the whole planning process is actually, can we be more open to some of the reporting that sits in the wider market from a gap perspective? Again, this isn't a saying that we're moving to gap straight away, but we're just starting to explore those areas as to, again, removing duplicate processes that you have just set up just to deal with Lloyd's. That's some of the stuff that we're looking at. And secondly, some of the system aspects. If you're a large entity, you will have a IT and tech transformation strategy that you'll be looking to adopt. If the corporation come along saying you have to use this system, again, that's adding complexity and cost into the market. What we're trying to do is actually, how can our systems tap into to their own technology systems that allow the flowing of data in a far easier way, so you don't have to duplication and having certain teams to report things or implement things twice on various systems. That's the dual platform piece.
Okay, my misunderstanding. I thought it was more about Lloyd's recognizing that they're part of an ecosystem that's slightly larger, and then how do we then play an architect within a larger DA ecosystem? That's fine. That's helpful. Last thing I had for you, Lloyd's, I'm sure it's a question that's come up. I'm sure there's many a cover holder that would love to have access directly to syndicates and managing agents. And right now, as opposed to having to go through Lloyd's brokers, and it's just one of those things that makes Lloyd's slightly less competitive relative to company markets. Just want to see if that's been something that's been discussed. I appreciate it's a massively sensitive topic. Just want to see if that's come up in your conversations or if that's anywhere on the radar.
Yeah, well, I think that comes back to some of the sort of evolving models that sit within DA. So that's certainly come up on sort of individual cases for various reasons where they've looked to explore different structures, particularly as more and more of the digital platforms are coming onto the platform and people are investing, whether it's a cover holder's own tech platform or whether it's a managing agent syndicate owned platform. So it's certainly something we've considered. Again, partly that comes back to some of the commercials that the managing agent, broker and the cover holders will be having in conversation. So we aren't going to be coming out saying do not use Lloyd's brokers. That's absolutely not that's definitely not what we're saying here. At the same time, if there's new structures or a new way of wanting to underwrite as part of your conversations with your capacity bearing, if that's something you want to test us with to see whether or not it's, from a regulatory licensing perspective, we're even able to do that, where that comes back to us trying to be more open-minded, solution orientated, having the question. Again, one of the things I've found in the 2 years is there's quite a bit of myth busting sometimes. Like Lloyd said you can't do this, or Lloyd said you couldn't do that. On a weekly basis, I'm having those conversations to say that's not necessarily true, or this is a rule that was implemented 10 years ago. No one knows why they said it. Let's crack on. So if there's certain areas you're wanting to explore, feel free to test us. But there's certain rules and regulatory requirements as part of our own bylaws and licensing in certain jurisdictions where we have to still use that.
I just wanted to add, so from our side, there is no requirement to use a Lloyd's broker. You can you can set up on Atlas and your managing agent. You can do a what we call like a DDMA, direct dealing managing agent relationship, and sort of it's almost like the broker is kind of in-house in the managing agent. So if that's something you want to explore, there's more information on Lloyds.com around that type of relationship. If you search direct deal managing agent relationship, if that is what you're looking to achieve, then that meets your requirements. But if it doesn't meet your requirements, then do let us know. But yeah, that type of relationship is already available on Atlas for you.
Thanks, Alice.
And there's a question. You have the question?
Yeah,
or
sure.
I have my glasses.
Yeah, just got a question which is coming on the chat facility, or I think a couple of questions actually. So first of those, Stuart, is how do you treat syndicate services companies versus cover holders? In particular, do you have any insight into the cost of doing business via the two distribution routes?
Yeah, Alice, this probably sits more in your world, doesn't it, from a oversight perspective? But I do know that there's service companies, we take a lighter approach from an oversight perspective versus some of the cover holders. Alice, do you want to give a bit more flavour on that?
Yeah, and it's Ella's here as well, because Ella does a lot of our work, so she can keep me honest in this regard as well. So yeah, from an example, for service companies, they have a lighter touch around sort of things like they don't require third-party audits, but and things like completing their annual compliance. The kind of sort of requirements around that is that it must be 100% written business from their managing agent. So the definition of a service company must be upheld. There was a thematic review that was issued out to managing agents. I think it was a couple of years ago now, was it, Ella? About a year and a half, maybe.
Yeah.
And so we're just looking at implementing that guidance into updating our service company guidance, and we'll be kind of transparent there around and updating what the kind of difference in terms of that. But we are lighter touch on service companies compared to cover holders. Was there anything you wanted to add, Ella?
Yeah. I was going to say, so we sort of have 6 criteria for a service company to meet to be a service company, which are all about being very closely linked to the managing agent. And so it's that close relationship and knowing that the service company is operating within the same control environment as the managing agent that allows that lighter touch approach for the service company, which, as Alice was saying, I can see the second half of that question, which is an insight into costs, which I can't provide any thoughts on.
Yeah, in terms of insight and cost, that's not something that we've got the sort of splits we'd sort of be sharing at this moment in time, because we don't have the information. It's not us hiding it.
And Stuart, just one thing I wanted to raise as well, which resonated with me, your AI underwriting strategy, which I think is quite a hot topic. I just wondered, we in the next session, which I believe is in June, whether we could have sort of 10 minutes on that, if that's possible.
Yeah, so we're at the moment we're literally so many of you probably know Emma Bennett, who, if you write A&H, you might have dealt with Emma, who worked in the underwriting performance. She's now working in the delegated underwriting space, so she's leading on this piece of work. In terms of the timescales that we're working towards, is by the end of this month we will have completed an internal paper, and then we're then going to be going to sort of the markets leadership team and Exco to kind of outline what we think the oversight in this space is needed over the next few years. So it might be better maybe sort of Q3, once we've gone through that kind of internal challenge and making sure that we're aligned within the corporation, that we can share, but certainly the common language of the different terms and phrases across the value chain is something that we can certainly share at a sooner date, because we're quite keen to, and we're working really closely with a number of people in the market on that. So it's not just us squiggling away in our building coming up with some new AI terms. We're actually talking to people who are already sort of living and breathing this day in, day out.
Great, thank you. I was just wondering really whether the MGAA might be able to assist in that, actually, because MGAs are really at the forefront of new technology, as you know, including AI. So
yeah, if you've got someone who we could speak to, more than happy. Like I said, we're speaking to tech companies, we're speaking to a number of cover holders, managing agents, brokers, people coming through the lab, Lloyd's lab. So yeah, we went to the Geneva Association last month over in Milan to talk to sort of what's going on in Europe. So we're kind of open to all thoughts as we're pulling this together.
okay, great, thank you.
Great. Any other questions for Stuart? No, great. Stuart, thank you very, very much. Hugely appreciated. Stepping in last minute for this topic as well, and walking us through the plans for Lloyd's corporate strategic priorities. Next up, we have Alice, Benbow, and Katie Day. Alice is DA Manager at Lloyd's. Katie Day is Quality Assurance Manager at Lloyd's, to speak through guidance on hot topics and best practice. Alice and Katie.
Thank you. Would you mind moving the slide on, please? Perfect. So if we go to this slide, so we just wanted to kind of bring an update of some areas that one of the kind of areas that Stuart was mentioning around our priorities is DA guidance. So we'll come on to what we're looking at coming soon, but we wanted to kind of give you a flavour of what we have already done and the information around on this. This is all, when you get this pack, there's links to Lloyds.com on each of these, so you'll be able to go and read more detail around them. So feel free to kind of have a little read around them and give us any kind of questions and feedback that you have around them. So the first one I wanted to give you a little update on is retrospective endorsement guidance. So this is where we found a trend of a lot of endorsements being backdated and signed after they're effective. So this is us issuing guidance around for managing agents when they needed to come to us, and there's only a handful of what we call category ones, where prior consultation with Lloyd's is required to ensure that these changes. So an example will be if you're retrospectively backdating the inception date, and we want to understand why that is being done from that side. And then the rest of them, in terms of category 2, are discussions, and we expect them to be managed with yourselves and the managing agent, but it's just some guidance around setting our expectations of our kind of view around what we call retrospective endorsements. The next one, which is quite kind of key for this kind of audience, is ownership attestation. So as Stuart mentioned, we had changed our application process about 18 months now, to being, as well as our changes in permissions process, to being an attestation-based approach. We have updated this ownership attestation, which is one of the changes in Atlas, to align with that as well. And this is one where yourself as a cover holder can sign it, and it can be pushed through without the need of the managing agent. So this is one that you can sign, and it can go through with the support if you have one of your Lloyd's broker. So this information is where you change your ownership, updating it, and just attesting that things like there's no significant material changes and things like that would maybe cause a change in a need for a new application, or a change significantly that we just need to kind of understand. So we hope this will speed up the process. It was one of the changes in permissions that wasn't encompassed because it's not an additional permission, it's just a change in the update of your status. So this will hopefully speed up and set our kind of expectations of where we need to understand more around the ownership, where when we don't, it can just be processed straight through. So that one is now available as well on our website, and we launched that I want to say about a month or two ago. So it's quite like a recent one in this year. So hopefully that will be beneficial to some of you. Third-party material issues. We just wanted to make you aware that we updated our guidance on Lloyds.com. This is around where there may be an issue with a cover holder or a DCA where the managing agent may bring it to us. And just to give you an example of this, we don't expect, this is not where there's a commercial dispute. We don't expect these to be brought to us. These are just material issues where we expect to be notified. And I actually opened up the guidance, just wanted to give you kind of a couple of examples. So, for example, if you became insolvent or bankrupt, and there was committed a criminal offence or acted fraudulently, failed to have proper control of your assets, things like that. So there's a couple of examples there. It's not an exhaustive list. It's not an intent for us to be involved in commercial disputes. It's purely where something is significant enough that we feel the managing agent should notify us. But for your transparency, we wanted to include it. This is all available on the website for you to be aware of where you may encounter Lloyd's reaching out to you should we become aware of any kind of these issues. But we don't have high volumes. It's just something that we wanted to make you aware of. I'll just pause there because I'm going to move on to some other ones. Is there any particular questions on these ones in particular that anyone wanted to ask just whilst we're on this slide? We can come back as well if people want to digest them and and come to it. So if we move on to the next slide. Perfect. So this is around innovation cover holders. We are following the launch of our attestation approach. We already had a different approach for innovative cover holders. We have just aligned and updated this to ensure that it is as streamlined as possible, again, with our new approach. So if you are considering being a cover holder and you're innovative, and the definitions on Lloyds.com again of all around what we consider to be an innovative cover holder, this will show you and talk you through the kind of process and the steps to become a Lloyds cover holder, where it may slightly differ from a typical application, and how we can support and help you to become a Lloyds cover holder. And then another one is letter of authority. So this is a template that we issued. It's not a mandate in any way of that you must use this letter. This is a letter that confirms that there is a binding authority in place and it's signed by the managing agent. We had a number of requests around confirming that binding authorities are in place and confirming that this is true. Sometimes your policyholders may want to validate that this is a true policy. So there is a template that we worked on and discussed with the LMA, and there's one for Lloyd Europe and there's one for London. So it's just a template that managing agents can confirm. So again, all available on our website. None of this is not shared. So feel free to have a read and look through. And then finally, what we wanted to do is, if we move on to the next slide, is we have done this with the managing agents and brokers, and these are the next topics that we are looking at. And we wanted to understand from your side, what ones were priority and which ones you were kind of keen to be involved in as a community. So one of the key ones that the managing agents and brokers have fed back to us that they would like is masters and subs binders. That's the key priority from their side. It doesn't mean that we can guarantee there'll be the order that they'll be sort of coming out, but it just helps us prioritize that if we have anything that we're looking at and they're at the similar place and we want to get one out, it helps us know, and it also helps us know where you want to be engaged and understand the topics. I'm happy to talk through any of the topics in terms of a higher level if anyone wants a sort of summary of what these are. So it's more of a discussion point, or happy for you to post in the chat if you feel more comfortable letting us know there. But these are the key ones that we are working on at the moment and looking to kind of move along, and we have been working on over the kind of sort of last few months. So we're looking for your opinion really in terms of prioritization so that it can support us and making sure we deliver what the market want. Did anyone have any? Go for it.
Yeah, could you just give like a one sort of blurb on each one, maybe just in terms of what what's being discussed on them?
Yeah,
Maybe just
no,
to-
yeah. So because because we're exploring them, so they will bits and bobs will come in terms of clarification. But so masters and subs, we see a lot of master, what's called master and sub arrangements, where you may have a cover holder that then has a sub binder, and they may act as someone that sort of amalgamates the bordereau or is a higher referral for you, or may provide services and grouping together. We've just found inconsistencies of these used, and we're light at the moment in the code of practice around our definition of what a master and sub binder is. So we're just looking at clarifying those types of arrangement and what we understand. We had seen a few where we have master binders where there were no name cover holder on them, and setting our expectations around the fact that that's for us is not a binding authority because there is no cover holder and a managing agent, and kind of setting our expectations around what we recognise or don't recognise as a master and sub. So that's that one. Reinsurance worldwide is because we know that a lot of binding authorities, when it's reinsurance, say worldwide. However, Lloyd's isn't necessarily licensed always worldwide. So it's around setting up the expectations around what do we expect to be in a binding authority when it's reinsurance and operating in that territory. So it's clarification around that, because we see a lot of just binders that say worldwide, and what we expect in those kind of situations. Treaty, we don't really have much sort of conversation or topic of guidance around this at the moment, but Lloyd's expectations around treaty business and what our appetite and tolerance and processes under delegated authority business. So we're just looking at providing some commentary on that. Product partners is a different type of when it's not suitable to be a cover holder. For example, you could be providing technology, but you are technically binding the risks and issuing the policy documentation. So we have set up, there was a bulletin, I can't remember, but a little while ago, that was issued around product partners, and we're just looking to build that out and give guidance and process. Stuart, was there something, did you want to add anything?
I was just going to say, I think this is something that I'm sure people on the call and your teams are seeing more and more. This is the whole bit I was mentioning around the sort of evolving DA digital systems whereby, you know, either yourself own the platform and you're inputting the acceptance and pricing of the managing agent syndicate, or whether you're tapping into their own systems, etc., where you know, as a distribution route, you're able to get access to product very, very quickly through an electronic platform. There's a lot of kind of outsourcing risk and regulatory challenges in this space, but it's something that we're keen to just in that area.
Yeah. So this is a different process from our side, so where you don't need to become a cover holder, you can become a product partner. There are some, clarifying, there are some territorial restrictions where in some territories the restrictions are that you do need to be a cover holder, but where we can, we're looking to support more of product partners, and we have already got a handful of these as well, so just looking to clarify and issue more clarity on these. The next one is C&C numbers, so cover holder and consortium numbers. So we wanted to issue guidance around the distinction between the two, as well as what they can and can't do in terms of things like layering. So we sometimes get requests for a cover holder number to be able to write binders, for example, or write a line slip, and setting what our expectations and requirements are around that. So our appetite, and looking to just give clearer guidance of where we feel it is necessary to have a conversation, but also trying to step away and give guidance around where we don't need to have a conversation going forward, and then the distinction between, as I say, cover holders and consortium numbers and what they can and can't do. Key staff and remote workers. So currently we just want, there is a remote workers form on Lloyds.com, and we're looking to update or potentially discuss whether or not we need this at all in terms of the shape of the world that we now work in terms of remote working, and we're exploring that and just clarifying what our expectations are around recording key staff and whether or not you need a remote worker form. So we just know that that's an outdated bit of guidance, and that potentially needs bringing up to date. So that one. Devolved administrator guidance. So this is where on Atlas, you have a devolved administrator who can add and remove users and set permissions in terms of Atlas. We've seen a number of requests coming through to ourselves where potentially the devolved administrator for Atlas has left, or you don't know who that is, and getting that set up so that we can help support that guidance process so that you can quicker administer your users, and if you want to change your devolved administrator, the process that you go through so that we can set expectations. Because at the moment, for example, my team, we handle the query, but we refer to our colleagues in our group technology team. So just kind of clarifying the process and kind of the steps that it goes through. A glossary of DA terms. We've been asked to kind of clarify some of our terminology and just provide better transparency around some of the terms that are used that are unique to DA. So we just want to clarify kind of some terminology that is used. E-learning. So just again, setting our expectations and clarifying when e-learning is required. So you may be familiar with some of the e-learning modules we have around financial crime, complaints, I believe, and other bits like that. So just setting our where Lloyd's expectations versus where a managing agent may ask you to complete e-learning, and distinguishing between the two. And the current multi-year transfer process. So if you have a binding authority that is on a multi-year wording, so that's the 3-year binding authority wording, there is a transfer process that happens at the end of the year where it moves from 1 year of account to another, and some documentation is signed by the managing agent to confirm that at the anniversary the binding authority will transfer. So it may not be as relevant, but it's just in terms of what that process is so that you're familiar, if you do have a multi-year binder at this time, what that process is and how that operates, and the sort of timeline of the expectations of when we may come out to the market and ask questions and what's involved in that. That's a lot of me talking about some topics, but I'm happy to take and take any kind of, they are broader and deeper, or sometimes they are just going to be as, hopefully as brief as just kind of setting what our expectations are. So we just really wanted to know where you wanted to be involved in those conversations and which topics you would like to see soon, really.
Yeah, that's something maybe we take offline within MGAA. That's not sure that this. It's good. It's good thought, I think, for that, and it might be something on the research agenda, or find a way of canvassing internally some answers to some of these questions.
But yeah, we could certainly do that. And Alice, it would be useful if you wouldn't mind, just under those subheadings, actually just start, give us a few words, and so we circulate that to help us really, and membership, and get some feedback for you.
No, that's fine. I'm just going to open up. So just for awareness, so the topics that when we asked the managing agents and brokers, so the top one for us at that time was masters and subs, and then following that we have key staff and remote workers, and then the devolved administrator for Atlas. So doesn't mean we're not going to come to any of them others. It doesn't mean that if we can get a quick win and get some of these out quicker, doesn't mean we're not going to hold it back and say you told us you didn't want this. And it equally, some of them like masters and subs we've been working on for a good while, because we wanted to understand the different scenarios, and we don't want to rush it out and it not be full and comprehensive. So it may not be that it's the order they come out, but it really does help us prioritize and know which ones you want us that will support. So we'll take that as an action, that we'll send over a synopsis afterwards, and then you guys can let us know. So let us know which ones are most valuable to you, and then equally which topics you'd like it to be involved in.
Thanks, Alice.
Perfect. I think the next slide, I think I'm now handing over to Ella for her update from a customer oversight.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Ella. I'm a customer oversight manager at Lloyd's. And I've just been asked to give a quick update on the priorities for the customer oversight team for this year. So if we move on, there we go. Yep. So it will come as no surprise to anyone that the consumer duty is one of our main focus areas for this year. So given the implementation timeline, what we're doing this year is a consumer duty review, which is going to go on throughout the year. So we won't expect this to affect you as cover holders at all, really, as the engagement will be with managing agents. But just to give you, an idea of what we're looking at and what we're doing. So the first part of the review is a questionnaire, and that's currently out with managing agents for them to complete. And once we get those questionnaires back, we'll be analysing them, and then in the second half of the year, we're going to be carrying out some more in-depth work with those managing agents who have the highest consumer duty exposure. So as part of that, we will be looking at how managing agents are working with their cover holders and how they're understanding how cover holders are meeting their own consumer duty expectations. But our focus is going to be very much on what managing agents have already done and what they're currently doing, and therefore it shouldn't involve any additional engagement with cover holders. And then depending on what we find, we'll provide some feedback to the market at the end of the review, and the aim of anything that we do provide in that regard will be to ensure that we see consistent good practice behaviours adopted across managing agents and across the market. So it would be, sharing examples of good practice, and also any weaknesses that we find where we feel like we can provide valuable guidance. The other thing that we have been working on and have now published is some updated guidance on master and group policies. So this guidance was published just before Easter. We've had guidance in place for many years, and it was updated last in 2018 following a thematic review that we did. The aim of this update has really been to provide more guidance, more examples, and bring it to life a bit. So the only significant changes have been around managing agents reporting requirements to Lloyd's. So again, this isn't something that is likely to affect you as cover holders directly. But if there is any impact where you do write master and group policies, then you may have some conversations with your managing agents as they digest the updated guidance and requirements. At the moment, it's available on the Insights Hub, which you have to have special access to, but we are going to be putting it all onto Lloyds.com in a few weeks. So all the guidance and all the examples and the checklist, we've produced sort of a checklist around when something is a master or group policy. So all of that will be on Lloyds.com in the near future and accessible for everyone. I'm happy to answer any questions on those topics or anything else to do with customer.
I just have a quick one on here. I know there's been a lot of work done on consumer duty over the last year, and certainly, I know Lloyd's has done a lot of work, as have most of the composite markets accordingly. Just Lloyd's, to my mind, has always been more focused, been less focused on sort of end consumer business as such. What changes have you seen over the last year that have taken place that have resulted in some sort of, larger change, if you will, as a result of all the activity that's been taking place around consumer duty?
I mean, I think that's what we're really hoping to learn more about from this piece of work, is to understand where, product review processes have been updated to reflect consumer duty requirements. And then, of course, the the service and the outcomes are disappearing from my mind right now. But we've had a lot of conversations, but this review is where we're really going to hopefully look at what actually has been done and what's changed.
Okay, I mean, I think it's a topic within the MGA that we've been discussing, including there's been a lot of pushback to the FCA around some of these requirements. There just seems to be a lot of work with very little change that we actually see is manifesting itself, with the exception of maybe gap insurance in one or two other areas. So it's one of those areas where it would be good to understand if there's been learnings from your perspective and your side as to changes that you've seen, either in terms of behaviors or that this is actually added value to business and customer outcomes that I think that we've all been struggling. I've been, I mean, I don't know, maybe other people have, really seen value in it. We all believe in taking advantage of undertaking review processes if they add value. I think all of us have been, well, I've been struggling with it, and I think others have as well.
Yeah, and certainly, depending where we see value in providing feedback, that's what we would be covering in that market-wide feedback towards the end of the year.
Okay, so watch this space from your perspective and revisit it at the end of the year and see what comes back.
Yeah, we've only just started. We've only just sent out the questionnaire, so we've got to get some answers and do our analysis before we have much to share.
Appreciate the sensitive topic as well. So, okay, any questions, Bella?
Can I ask a general question? I don't know if it's here or it's AOB. I don't know if it's Ella or Alice. It's Jane Nicholson for Antares. It's really looking at operational resilience as we move towards our March deadlines. Have you had any input with your colleagues in the Ops Res team at Lloyd's in looking specifically at any requirements in the DA space?
So it's not a question I can explicitly answer now, but I know that we have provided updates from a cover holder perspective before, so we can definitely take that away and get you an update. The work is not led by myself, but that's under the DA audit and engagement team from the cover holder perspective, so we can get an update on that for you. Is that something you'd require before? I'm assuming before the next session, so it's not a topic for the next meeting, it's more for outside of this.
Is there anything, any pointers, anything now that would just be really helpful?
Yeah, feel free to drop myself an email and I'll put you in touch with the relevant people.
I will do. Thanks, Alice.
No worries.
Thanks. Any other questions for Ella before we move to Q&A? All right, up to Q&A. Do we have questions for the forum at large? We did have one pre-submitted question. I'll just read out. It has been announced that DDM, aka DA Stats, is being switched off, abandoned later this year. What communication by Lloyd was given to this forum or directly to cover holders, i.e. MGA members of that decision? How does LIC Lloyd's Brussels intend to react to this? Are the same data and timeline reporting standards simply being passed across to managing agents, i.e. cover holders going back to sending Excel documents? And what lessons have been learned by Lloyd's in the market from this? I don't know if you want to field that one.
So without remembering all the specifics within the one question, but yeah, so in terms of the DDM, this kind of talks back to the point I was making around us being system agnostic. So I wasn't around to know what engagement was done with cover holders at the point of the decision. However, funny enough, I've got a call later this afternoon on this very topic with our Lloyd's Europe team. So there's kind of two elements to this that sit within it. DDM was one of many border road management systems that are out in the market. The there's two bits that sit within it, and this comes back to us really challenging what information we actually need within the corporation. So DDM that has a lot of sort of transactional level information specifically for Europe, and it was only mandated just for Europe. Speaking to the team and sort of challenging what information do we use this for? Do we use it for regulatory reporting? If not, is there a better way of us, as part of some of the wider Velenetic conversations, of extracting that information? So there's going to be a communication, I think, in the next couple of weeks as to what the phasing of that looks like, because there's some sort of tax authority reporting that sits as a result on the back end of DDM. Where, this is where the market, which systems they want to use, whether it's Viper, Tide, Watertrace, Send, there's a load of them out in the market. They're just a few that come off the top of my head. What we're saying is you should not have to, the Lloyd's Corporation should not say you have to use this system in order to process your business. How we receive that information in a far more efficient way is something we're like I said, we're having a look at. So I think watch this space in terms of the communicate. I'm just sort of starting to get involved in this myself in the last couple of weeks, but I know the team are certainly wanting to communicate something in the next couple of weeks, which we've got a conversation with the LIC exec later today.
Great, thanks, Stuart. Much appreciated. And yeah, communication, you can see that you guys are really, just from the presentation today, you're sharing a lot more information as to where you're at, where you're going, what's being discussed. And I know speaking, I can speak on behalf of certainly our community, it's certainly greatly valued. So, well done. I appreciate that sometimes.
We'll keep asking away. Like I said, there's so many myths that I find across this place, which keeps it interesting. But yeah, don't get me wrong, we're not going to say yes to everything and be able to solve all problems, but certainly, hopefully give you, like, if there's a rule, we'll be able to tell you why there's a rule, as opposed to there's just a rule.
Excellent. Any other questions for the forum? Any other points others want to make? Anything anybody else wants to share with everyone? Anyone from here? Anyone online? Anything on the chat?
Nothing on the chat at the moment, no.
Okay, great. We're a few minutes early, which is great. Next meeting that we have, Tim, I don't know I know one of the things on the agenda is the
16th of June.
16th of June? Okay.
Thank you.
16th of June, I think that one of the topics was, Stuart, I think you're back up for strategic business plan, or Lloyd business plan, and then, one of the things I think that we wanted to get was, what's being communicated to the managing agents and syndicates, or, cover holders are clearly downstream from that, reduce surprises later on, later in the autumn period. So that's those kind of.
Yeah, we'll be able to tell you, again, this is what on a quarterly basis, particularly in May, we go out to the market around before the planning process to go, what are the kind of areas of focus that we're going to be looking from an underwriting, to be able to repeat the same messaging that we're giving to the market. So the whole Lloyd said this or Lloyd said no, that's another way of hopefully crossing off some of those myths as well.
Excellent. Well, with that, I think we'll close it. I just want to thank Stuart, Alice, Katie, Ella, unfortunately Jane couldn't make it, and Tim for organizing, shepherding us through this. And we will see everyone on June 16th.
Mid-June, 16th of Sunday, so normally
Mid-June. So it's not June 16th.
16th of Sunday.
Yes, take care. Thank you.
Thank you.